The Great Patriotic War not only took millions of lives, but also maimed the bodies and souls of hundreds of thousands of people. No matter how hard and terrible it was for the fighters at the front, women who found themselves in the occupied territories under the German was even more terrible. At the front, everything was clear. The enemy was ahead. It must be destroyed. In the occupation, fascists were everywhere, behaved like masters, abused girls and women. There was nowhere to run away and nowhere to hide. Some of the girls joined partisan units, others became underground fighters. All of them risked their lives every day, and at any moment they could fall into the clutches of the Germans and experience the horrors of torture and mockery. For the Nazis, who found themselves in foreign lands, thousands of kilometers away from their native Germany, the deterrents of civilization were a thing of the past and no longer made sense. The Germans had gone wild and were driven by natural instincts. They had only one thing in their heads: we are conquerors and can do any lawlessness. Every girl they perceived as a victim on whom they could pounce and satisfy their base desires. In any settlement, village, or town where the Germans were based, dating houses were immediately set up. True Aryan women were not enough for the entire German army for a long time, and the soldiers did not really care. The Germans took women of all ages to the houses, excluding only old women. Even teenagers of 14 to 15 years old had to endure. Everything happened strictly according to the hierarchy. First, the victims went to the officers, senior in rank, then passed to ordinary soldiers. The Germans were greatly inflamed by the fact that the Russian girls who were supplied were almost all untouched. After relations with them, they felt even greater heroes than on the battlefield. In their desires, the Nazis stopped at nothing. They got rid without regret of a collected farmer who wanted to hide his daughter from a German officer. A 16-year-old Komsomol girl who told the Nazis to their face that they would not see victory was taken out of the village, and no one found out what happened to her. And the teacher, who tried to escape from the sweaty hands of the officer, was executed on the spot. A normal human heart could not endure such pain. Old men and children threw themselves at the Germans to protect their loved ones and were shot. Those who survived carried the memory of the cruelty and inhumanity of the conquerors through all the years. In every village and in every house occupied by the Nazis, there was misery. The Germans lived in peasant houses, forced the local population to serve them, ate, drank, and in the intervals had fun with pretty girls. Everything was at their fingertips, and they knew no denial of anything. The arguments were ironclad: a pistol on their belt and a gallows outside the window. Strong rage and cruelty were extended by the Germans to girls who allowed themselves to fight the enemy. In the Soviet Union, not only men, but also women stood up in defense of the homeland. They fought on the fronts, became scouts, went into partisan units, and worked in the underground. In Germany, an order was issued. Fighting Russian women were shot on the spot. In no other country did the fascists see such patriotism, steadfastness, and heroism, which were shown by Soviet girls. The Germans, accustomed to seeing their Frau in the kitchen with children, could not assume that young snipers, signalers, pilots, and even tankers would fight against them. The girls themselves realized that they would rather die than be captured by the Nazis. Each of them had a bullet for herself, and some of them even had a grenade. The Nazis were furious when a Soviet woman was captured. The Nazis used inquisitorial torture and put the girls on public display. But no hardship could not break our girls. Komsomol underground Young Guard became an example of courage and fearlessness. Among the underground, there were many high school girls. They pasted leaflets, communicated with senior communist comrades, skillfully stole important staff documents. The received data helped to make sabotage, to undermine railway trains with equipment and German soldiers, to release our prisoners. When the fascists were able to catch the Young Guards, they made no distinction between young men and girls. Komsomolok were tortured, demanded from them confessions, forced to give names and surnames of other underground fighters. The girls stood their ground and betrayed no one. Another heroic girl who did not betray her comrades and went down in history, Zoya Kosmodomyanskaya. In the fall of 1941, when the Soviet people were just learning to fight, she was captured by the Nazis. Zoya's task was to set fire to important objects in the village where the German headquarters was located. The task was accomplished, but the Komsomol girl was captured by the fascists. She was interrogated, taken out without clothes in the cold. The girl held firm, did not ask for mercy, did not grovel before the enemy. She did not betray a single comrade in arms. The fascists were amazed by the way the young lady held herself. They were not given to understand the strength of spirit of the Moscow Komsomol girl. Before her death on the scaffold, Zoya said a fiery speech and called on all Russian people to fight fascism to the last breath. A whole month Kosmodomyanskaya's body was not removed from the gallows. Thus, the Germans wanted to frighten people and show that it will be so with everyone who wants to resist the new power. Another girl, a little older than Zoya, who was also captured by the enemy, sang Internationale before her death. The girls who joined the partisan detachments had a hard time. They endured all the hardships associated with the cold, meager food and unsettled life. Their duties were associated with greater risk than those of men. Commanders and fighters came out of the forest only for operations, blowing up bridges, planting explosives, rescuing civilians. A man could not walk through a village or hamlet and go unnoticed. He would immediately be arrested or shot on the spot. Therefore, it was the girls who made sorties, found out the arrangement of German equipment, estimated the number of enemy soldiers and policemen. It was also necessary to find places where it was possible to get food for all partisans. With this information, the girls returned to the forest and reported the situation to the commander of the detachment. At first, the fascists did not pay much attention to the free movements of seemingly village girls, but later they realized that under the low-threaded scarves and baggy clothes could hide partisans. After each sabotage, villages and hamlets were raided. A large number of civilians were executed, and if a girl from a partisan group was caught in the fascists' net, then she was unfortunate. The most cruel tortures were intended for such a girl. The self-love of the fascists could not stand the situation that they, under their noses, walk around village girls and collect secret information. But the girls kept silent and looked with contempt at the fierce enemies. The German services often tried to recruit Soviet women who had been captured. They were especially interested in scouts and snipers. Girls with perfect command of these specialties were very much needed in the German army. Accurate shooters were valued for their weight in gold, and scouts could become indispensable in obtaining secret information about the plans and intentions of the Soviet troops, about the number of weapons and combat-ready units. But historical facts about the Great Patriotic War show that not a single Soviet girl was recruited by the Nazis. Young patriotic women preferred to die than to be taken prisoner. They did not bend under horrible tortures, did not betray their comrades in arms and commanders, and inflicted a holy terror on the Germans.